broadcasting.
Blog Talk USA. Are you tired of waiting for change?
1012, and it gives me 1,250 feet. Texas.
Announced the arrival of their flight from Los Angeles and Chicago.
Explosion.
Welcome, everybody, to this Thursday edition of TNZ Talk. It is the last day of March 2016. For the Trump supporters, that would be March 31st. No fooling. We have, of course, a lot to get to today. And unfortunately, we can't escape Donald Trump. He won't let us. And maybe that's part of the goal, but it's working. Joining me now is a top blogger for the Huffington Post and Liberals Unite, my partner in the Z in TNZ, Richard Zombeck. And Z, as always, a pleasure. You know, did it suck for you when you were in school and they did things alphabetically where you always had to be last, or did they sometimes invert it so that sometimes you were first?
No, they never inverted it. And in fact, if you go to any kind of hearing or court appearance in Massachusetts, they also call you alphabetically.
Not that you would know anything about that.
Well, I mean, I've had traffic violations, and I had to go to the state police. Yeah. It was a faulty traffic violation, and I was exonerated. But I went to court because the registry sticker I had gone to check to get my registration sticker, and it was like in March, and it only lasted till May, so it was only good for 2 months. And I showed up at the hearing. I got pulled over for having an expired registration. I showed up at the hearing. I said, look, here's the paperwork. I got it in, March, and it expired in May. And the magistrate or the judge or whatever he was looked at the cop and said, you ever seen anything like this? And he's like, no. He goes, okay, see you later. And that was it. But they call you alphabetically. And then in elementary school, this was a scary one. When we did fire drills, we had to line up alphabetically. So I would be, it was a fire drill, but I was thinking there at 8 or 9 years old, I'm like, oh, Jesus, if there's a real fire, I'm going to be the last one out. So
that's one way to look at it.
I started looking for alternative escape routes very quickly.
I'd never really thought about that, but I guess they want you to do it in some kind of orderly fashion, so just rushing to the door to be first doesn't work, does it?
Well, I already knew which kids I was going to step over.
Wow. So you put some thought to that.
Oh, yeah. I'm getting him, and her out of the way.
And notice it was 2 hims and a her, so we appreciate that.
Yeah.
Anyway, good morning to you, and hope you had a nice day yesterday.
Oh, it was, you know what it was? It was Trump-tastic.
It was Trump-tastic.
It was a Trump-tastic day.
Did you end up watching any of the MSNBC town halls? Because they had like wall-to-wall candidate coverage.
Yeah, well, I watched some here and there. I recorded it. I was actually gonna, it's obviously gonna be. It's been replayed, and it got replayed until about midnight to 1 o'clock, which is when I went to bed. Portions of it got replayed. It's been put out all over the interwebs, and it'll be played today. So I don't think I'm gonna miss much of it. I did. One thing I will tell you is that everyone on MSNBC was very self-congratulatory. People were congratulating Rachel Maddow for her excellent interviews of Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders. And then she actually did a follow-up interview, too, because after she had finished the interview with Hillary Clinton, Donald Trump had made one of his many statements from yesterday. So I guess she rushed over to wherever Hillary was and redid a portion of the interview, which, tells me that she's, a conscientious journalist. And
well, what happened was the interviews were going on simultaneously. And so the Trump interview was live where the Hillary interview was taped. And so when Rachel got back to the office, she heard about the comments Trump had made about abortion and that women should be punished for such, and thought that she would give the secretary an opportunity to respond to that. And boy, oh boy, did she respond to that. Yeah.
Well, and then Maddow, Chris Matthews was very good. I have a friend who's a liberal. He's a hippie, and like a real hippie, and not a dirty hippie, but Grateful Dead following, tie-dye T-shirt, dressmaking hippie, and he has always complained about Chris Matthews interrupting people, and I've constantly pointed out that that's what a good reporter does and a good interviewer does, is you don't let someone get away with something. And I thought he was really good yesterday. He pushed Trump to say some things that he probably shouldn't have and didn't want to say, and Maddow was quick to point that out.
Well, I unfortunately, as you know, I had to be away last night, and when I got home, it was rather late, but I did see the last half hour of the Trump interview and then the first half hour of the Clinton interview, although I could have done without Rachel Maddow's 6 minutes of explaining how they set it up and, how they made sure their phones were turned off and that the glasses of water were there. That was a bit much, and I love my Rachel, but I could have done without that. Just because I was tired and I wanted to hear the interview, did not necessarily want to hear Hillary. Didn't necessarily want to hear Rachel. But before we go any further, normally we don't start with audio, but I think that Trump's comments on abortion during the Chris Matthews interview. And can we agree before we play this audio that Chris Matthews was a much different interviewer with Donald Trump than he was with Hillary Clinton a few weeks ago?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
He said with great confidence.
Adversarial.
Justifiably so. And by the way, and maybe we'll get some audio for tomorrow, when the pro-LGBTQ guy asked Donald Trump about same-sex marriage, I thought that was a classic moment, at least in what I saw. I didn't see the first half hour. So with that said, the controversy now begins, and the quote-unquote clarification, which we'll get to in a moment. But let's listen to what Donald Trump said to Chris Matthews about abortion.
Should the woman be punished for having an abortion?
Look,
and this is not something you can dodge. If you say abortion is a crime or abortion is murder, you have to deal with it under the law. Should abortion be punished?
Well, people in certain parts of the Republican Party and conservative Republicans would say yes, they should be punished.
How about you?
I would say that it's a very serious problem, and it's a problem that we have to decide on. It's very hard.
But you're for
are you going to say, well, wait, are you going to say put them in jail? Is that
well,
the
no, what I'm asking you, because you say you want to ban it. What's that mean?
I am pro-life, yes.
What is ban? How do you ban abortion? How do you actually do it?
Well, you'll go back to a position like they had, where people will perhaps go to illegal places.
Yeah.
But you have to ban it.
You ban it, and they go to somebody who flunked out of medical school.
Are you Catholic?
Yes, I think
And how do you feel about the Catholic Church's position?
I accept the teaching authority of my church on moral issues.
But do you know their position on abortion?
Yes, I do.
And do you concur with that position?
I concur with their moral position, but legally I get to the question. Here's my problem with it.
No, but let me ask you, but what do you say about
It's not funny.
Your church? Yeah, it's really not a funny thing. What do you say about your church? They're very, very strong.
They're allowed to, but the churches make their moral judgments, but you running for president of the United States will be chief executive of the United States. Do you believe in punishment for abortion? Yes or no, as a principle?
The answer is that There has to be some form of punishment.
For the woman?
Yeah, there has to be some form.
10 cents, 10 years,
I don't know. That I don't know. That
why
I don't
not?
know. I don't know.
You take positions and everything else.
Frankly, I do take positions and everything else. It's a very complicated position.
Yeah.
Gee, it's a very complicated position, Z, and I'm not going to take a position on it until I guess I'm fully briefed and somebody feeds my freaking brain with the answer I'm supposed to give. Well, it was too late at that point, you dumbass.
It really is amazing. And then, I mean, some of the other stuff he had to say, too, about, he wants to basically do away with nuclear proliferation, something that we've been dealing with for, 70 years.
My dear friend, let's stick with abortion for now, please. Can we come back to that stuff? I don't mean to be rude. I don't want to interrupt you. But let's stick with this issue because it didn't end there. And 3 hours later, he kind of flip-flops after the tsunami of the kerfuffle of saying that women should be punished in some way for having what is now a legal abortion. Of course, the clarification was, no, it's the doctors that perform them that should be punished. Okay, so the doctors that are legally performing abortions should now be punished. Can we please make up our mind, Mr. Trump? Because, frankly, you're an asshat.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and I mean, the thing is, too, is that, both the right and the left are kind of going nuts on this because it's not, they're, even pro-lifers don't want to punish the woman, right? So he kind of cornered himself with both of these statements. One, he wants to blame the woman. Then he comes out and portrays the woman as a victim. So he loses the pro-lifers and the female vote all in, the span of a half hour.
You had posted something, and I want to say 3 weeks ago, but let's call it 2 weeks for the sake of argument. And the headline read something like, after reading this, if you're a woman, you would never vote. Actually, it was a video. After watching this, if you're a woman, you would never vote for Donald Trump. And it ended up being that now infamous, that kind of went viral video of all the Trumpisms about if you're flat-chested, you can't be a 10, etc. Why would a woman, any woman, even a staunch Republican woman, vote for this dude?
Well,
not that I expect you to know that. You're not a woman, and you're certainly not a staunch Republican woman, at least not to my knowledge. I've never met you in person, so you could be.
I have a very deep voice.
Well, what did you tell me yesterday? Wear something nice for our conference call today, but not a dress.
I said, don't look slutty.
Don't look whorish is what you said, whorish.
I know, but I didn't want to say that, on the show.
I did.
I said, don't whore it up.
Yeah, well, whatever. See, now we're splitting hairs. But anyway, the bottom line is, why would a woman ever vote for this guy? And then by extension, why would you vote for Ted Cruz?
Well, yeah, exactly. Except, and I'm disappointed in myself because I was going to get this audio for today, but I was looking at the pile of audio that I had already gotten, and maybe I'll get it for tomorrow. There's an interview, and I think it was on 60 Minutes with female Trump supporters who are basically saying, well, he doesn't really mean it. He's just saying that to get attention, and it's not what he really means. And
he's just like my husband. My husband talks the same way, and he doesn't mean it either.
Well,
Z, a million years ago, during the Bush-Gore campaign,
literally,
this woman calls this woman calls my show. That's how long ago this was. And this woman calls my show And I had thrown the comment out there, why would anybody vote for George W. Bush? And she called the show, and she was in her minivan driving her kids to soccer. And I wish I were joking, and I'm not. And she said, well, I'm voting for George W. Bush because my husband told me to.
Beautiful. That is beautiful.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. Do you have that audio somewhere that we can replay that over and over and over again?
I wish I did.
I will tell you this, though. I was listening to NPR today. I dropped my wife off at the airport shuttle, and I was coming back this morning, and I was listening to NPR, and they were talking to this rep from a pro-life group, and they were talking about Donald Trump's comments, and she said something to the effect of, if we can overturn Roe versus Wade and make abortions illegal in this country, women who are having babies who would normally want to abort, there are millions of people who can help them through that. Okay? Now, I don't know what that means, but it gave me a little bit more insight into the pro-lifers, right? In that they're not completely discompassionate and void of empathy. They just don't want women to have abortions. And if you are pregnant and you don't want, and of course they mentioned, well, if they had parents who were talking to them about, safe sex or abstinence or whatever, we wouldn't be in this situation, blah, blah, blah. So I didn't particularly appreciate that she immediately goes to blaming it on the family dynamic. Although in some case I could see how that, whatever. But they're also completely against education in schools about pregnancy and safe sex and condoms and birth control and things like that. So it's really kind of like, well, if you have a baby, then you should have wanted the baby, and if you don't want the baby, then you're kind of you're immoral. But if you had this baby and you had it by accident, there are plenty of people that can help you figure out how to raise this baby once you have the baby that you don't want. So, I mean, it's not that I agree with what they're saying, but they are Donald Trump blaming women for this and saying that women should be punished if they want an abortion is completely contrary to the pro-life movement, in that they don't blame the woman. Now, I think when he turned around and said, you should blame the doctors.
Well, time out here. Let me, again, slightly disagree with you. The vast majority of pro-life people, including women, are not compassionate and are not like the person that you heard on NPR this morning. I only know this because I've been a pro-choice person both on and off air for over 20 years. I have worked closely with NARAL. I have worked closely with Planned Parenthood. I have been involved in literal live in-person events with both organizations. I have seen the whack jobs that carry pictures of aborted fetuses. And in fact, when I ran for Congress, my children were subjected to that. I was at an event for Planned Parenthood where my wife got into a shouting match with a African American man that said that the pro-choice movement was literally designed for natural selection, and that the black population was disproportionately harmed by the pro-choice movement. Of course, it has nothing to do with a woman's personal choice to have unprotected sex, but we could have that conversation some other time. Z, it astounds me the way the pro-lifers love to spin it. And yes, some of them sound mildly compassionate, And yes, they would love to hold some woman's hand while she is going through an unwanted pregnancy and then the birth of that child only to give it up for adoption. The problem with that is once that child is born, whether it is adopted or not, and let's say that child is taken from said mother, this is the same party that doesn't want to then fund the programs that help either underemployed, unemployed, underfunded families take care of these children. They just want them to have them, and they don't care what happens to them once they're born.
Right. They're all about life.
But I don't think I'm being wrong.
Yeah, no, they're completely pro-life until the child is born. And then after that, you're on your own. I mean, we see that every time they cut funds for food stamps or any kind of social service, education. I mean, never mind. I mean, because, there's always going to be the argument of, food stamps and welfare, that it's just free stuff for leeches. But, education is an argument, particularly when you see the amount of people who are, actually following and supporting Donald Trump, that we need a better educational system in this country. So, or Ted Cruz for that matter.
Again, I just find it astounding. Now, back to Ted Cruz and then, a little bit about John Kasich, of course. Both of them, in their own way, have their own twist on this. And, John Kasich said to Chuck Todd in an interview that, there could possibly be some exceptions in the case of a mother's life, rape or incest, but we have to be very careful around those issues without explaining. And then again, Chuck Todd didn't ask a follow-up question, which would have been the right thing to do. So that's John Kasich's take on it, is with some exceptions, but we have to be careful how we legislate that. What's there to hell to be careful about? Number one. Ted Cruz, of course, is just 100% constitutionalist pro-lifer. Roe v. Wade should be thrown out. Abortion should be illegal. And that's just the way it should be, Richard Zombeck. Listen, it doesn't matter if a woman was raped. Doesn't matter if daddy came to her in the night and impregnated her. Doesn't matter if the woman is going to die if she has that child. If I'm Ted Cruz, well, screw them all. Let them die. I don't care.
It's God's will.
Yeah, okay. You want to talk about natural selection, right?
I mean, there was. I can't remember which congressman it was that said this, but he said, there are some good things that come out of rape. I mean, it was a Republican congressman, but there can be some good things that come out of rape.
And what about the Republican congressman that said that if a woman really doesn't want to have a pregnancy, her body has a way of eliminating it?
Yeah, a woman's body can shut down in the case of rape. It's like, oh, okay. And let's remind
I was
people,
raped, so I'm not going to get pregnant.
Let's remind people too that this was not anyone with it. Oh no, actually he was a medical doctor, wasn't he?
I don't remember that he was a medical doctor, but you could be right.
I think he was. I think he had he had some kind of degree in medicine.
I think he had some kind of mental disorder is what he had.
Well, I think most Republicans do.
Oh, sweet Jesus. Anyway, so Donald Trump makes a statement, then kind of backs off from the statement, and of course, it's just an insane conversation on all sides. Now, this is not boding well with women. And Donald Trump is beginning to see a monumental slide in his poll numbers in Wisconsin. Ted Cruz this morning up by 10 points. Here's, and again, Ted Cruz is getting establishment endorsements by the truckload. Is he really? I mean, think about Ted Cruz has become kind of the de facto normal guy in this. How the hell does that happen?
Lindsey Graham, my favorite little Republican these days, said he was my
stand-up comedian.
Said he was my 15th choice. That's what he.
Ted Cruz.
Yeah, because they asked him why are you endorsing Ted Cruz, and he said, well, he was my 15th choice.
I caught a little crap last week. I had posted a picture of Lindsey Graham. It was a cartoon of Lindsey Graham with a gun to his head, and it said, I endorse Ted Cruz. People actually got angry with me because they thought I was making fun of those who commit suicide, which, of course, I wasn't. And maybe if we have time later, we can have that discussion, because you and I were talking about this before the show. People are becoming way too literal, way too intense, way too serious.
Way too offended.
Way too offended. But we'll come back to that. With that said, in our spin the wheel of audio, because we should get to some before we can't get to it at all, Anderson Cooper had a very short conversation on Donald Trump. So why don't we take a listen to that, and then we'll take a look at or take a listen to some more serious dialogue from Lawrence O'Donnell's show from a couple nights ago.
All right, here's Anderson Cooper doing his interview with Donald Trump.
I got to ask you about this back and forth between you and Senator Cruz about wives. After saying that you were going to spill the beans about Heidi Cruz, you retweeted an unflattering picture of her next to a picture of your wife.
I thought it was a nice picture of Heidi. I thought it was fine.
Come on.
I thought it was fine. She's a pretty woman.
You're running for president of the United States.
Excuse me. I didn't start it.
I didn't start it. But, sir, with all due respect, that's the argument of a 5-year-old.
I didn't start it. No, it's not the.
Yeah,
no, it's
the argument of a 5-year-old is he started it.
You would say that. That's the problem with our country.
Every parent knows a kid who says he started
Excuse me.
Mom, he's touching me.
Yeah, exactly. And he goes, that's what you would say. You infinity times. I hate you 2 times more. I hate you forever.
Yeah, infinity times 5.
Yeah.
Let's go back to the Chris Matthews interview for a moment and what Trump tried to do. When he asked Donald Trump about abortion, that would be Matthews, he turned it around on Chris Matthews and said, well, you're Catholic. What about your church? What about their doctrine? Now, Chris Matthews handled that, I thought, brilliantly, but it was classic Donald Trump. Here we go again with Anderson Cooper, and, well, he started it. Well, he said it first, and Anderson Cooper's right. It is the argument of a 5-year-old.
Yeah, and that was pretty brash. I mean, that's a bold statement to make for an interviewer. I mean, the level of frustration that you have to be feeling to say something like that to a presidential candidate that you're interviewing as a journalist. That's pretty bold. I mean, to say, I mean, it's one thing to say it off camera or on an interview later saying, yeah, he sounded like a 5-year-old. Even then, it shows the level of frustration that these guys have reached and what journalism has become, which is what, which actually feeds in nicely because we've got this some of these O'Donnell interviews. But even Chris Matthews, his response, well, you're Catholic, right? He's like, well, I'm not running for president, right? It's like my beliefs have nothing to do with this conversation. I'm interviewing you. You're not interviewing me. My background is not on is not being discussed here. I think Trump was just biding time. I think he was trying to sort out what he was trying to say because he hadn't done enough research. He wasn't prepared for the question. He calls himself a pro-lifer only because he wants their vote. There's plenty of audio of him. In fact, I posted an article on Liberals Unite yesterday that just has a string of commentary from Donald Trump in the past. And I'm talking the past, like, from 5 years ago till, maybe 2 years ago, of the liberal stances that he took on just about everything. He was not pro-life. He was not pro-gun. He was not pro-war. He liked Pelosi, Clinton, and Obama. And I mean, it's a killer. It was obviously done by an anti-Trump super PAC, but it'll make, I say this, I was going to say it'll make his supporters' heads explode, but it won't. They'll just go, well, yeah, whatever. He was just saying that because that's what he had to say at the time.
Well, for those that don't watch The Last Word with Lawrence O'Donnell, you're missing a treat. And I realize a lot of people are, that's bedtime for them, and so that's not a criticism. I'm just telling you it's quite a treat. And for those of you that aren't aware, Lawrence O'Donnell was a script consultant to the amazingly wonderful television show The West Wing. And it's clear why, Z. I mean, it's very clear why he was so handsomely paid as a consultant to Aaron Sorkin on The West Wing. And in fact, Lawrence O'Donnell's name appears in the credits quite often. Anyway, with that said, where do you want to start? With the Greenfield stuff or the Dan Rather stuff?
I want to play what Obama had to say about journalists because...
Well, yeah, that actually would be a very good place to start.
Yeah, so he was giving he had an event and he was talking about journalists, and this is a mashup of what he said throughout his speech. So let's play that first.
All right.
So it's worth asking ourselves what each of us, as politicians or journalists, but most of all as citizens, may have done to contribute to this atmosphere in our politics. I was going to call it carnival atmosphere, but that implies fun. When our elected officials and our political campaigns become entirely untethered to reason and facts and analysis, when it doesn't matter what's true and what's not, that makes it all but impossible for us to make good decisions on behalf of future generations. A job well done is about more than just handing someone a microphone. But it's to probe and to question and to dig deeper and to demand more. The electorate would be better served if that happened. It would be better served if billions of dollars in free media came with serious accountability. Especially when politicians issue unworkable plans or make promises they can't keep. And there are reporters here who know they can't keep them. There will be an inherent tension between the president and the press. It is supposed to be that way. I may not always agree with everything you report or write. In fact, it's fair to say I do not. But if I did, that'd be an indication that you weren't doing your job.
I particularly like the journalism is more than handing someone a microphone.
Well, it's absolutely true. I mean, you and I had a brief conversation today about a couple of, small rules of radio. It is more than just about handing someone a microphone. And I think that, in the year plus that you've been doing this on a regular basis, and I'm guessing here that you've learned a lot about the medium.
Oh, yeah. You're talking about radio?
Well, just, this part of the media in general.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, as you know, I was a reporter in North Carolina, and I've been, writing on HuffPost and for 7 years now. So I'm not quite sure.
I didn't think you were old enough.
Well, if you judge me by my picture, I'm not as good looking as my picture. I'll just put it that way. My wife's a very good photographer.
As your dad said, you have a face for radio.
I have a face for radio. So here's the thing, Tony, is that, you know, what you and I have seen and commented on a lot over the year or more that you and I have been doing this together is that we don't see a lot of follow-up. We don't see a lot of research. We don't see a lot of preparedness for an interview. And there's always a question in my mind when I watch someone being interviewed saying something that is grossly inaccurate, bordering on a lie. I mean, Politico already pointed out that Donald Trump basically lies every 5 minutes. And when you're in an interview like that, and someone says something outrageous, that there's no follow-up. You and I can watch this and go, well, wait a minute, that's not true. I know that. You know that. Does the average person who is, you know, trying to eke out a living pay that much attention to the news? Probably not, right? So they don't have the facts. And the reporters themselves and the journalists on TV don't stop them and say, well, wait a minute, that's entirely inaccurate. And part of it, I think, is possibly ignorance, but I think another part is what we've talked about before, that they're afraid if they start a confrontation or are adversarial in an interview, that they won't get that interview again, that they'll lose that contact and they won't have access to that person. And that's kind of scary. And in this, you know, new world of technology where there's a 24-hour news cycle, people who are being interviewed can pick and choose whose show they're going to go on. You can choose not to go on Fox News. You can choose not to go on Dave Matthews' show. In fact, Anderson Cooper had an interview with Ted Cruz, who accused Anderson Cooper of giving Donald Trump too much airtime. And Anderson Cooper looked at him and said, we've called you every day for the last 5 months to come on the show, and you've refused. You can call in anytime you want. Joe Scarborough said the same thing. All these other people are complaining about us taking calls from Donald Trump, and we've always said that they're welcome to call, that we'll take their calls. So, you know, how is that? Basically, you're talking to your base, you're in this insulated bubble, and you're not taking hard questions from the opposition.
Well, you know, in beyond that, and I don't think that we've captured this part of Lawrence O'Donnell's, introduction to both Dan Rather and Jeff Greenfield. But he talked about the infamous infomercial that the media covered after one of Donald Trump's primary victories, where he talked about the Trump steaks and the Trump wine and the Trump water. And Lawrence O'Donnell goes on and on and on about how each and everything Donald Trump said that evening was a lie. Yet every major media outlet either covered it live or talked about it nonstop the next day, and not one of them identified it as a series of lies.
Right, as inaccurate. In fact, this is probably a good time to play that Dan Rather interview on Lawrence O'Donnell, actually, because it covers a lot of what we're talking about right now.
Absolutely.
Dan, as you've been watching this campaign, you heard the president's critique last night of how we've been covering it. What is your reaction to what you've been seeing?
Well, about the president's speech last night, my first reaction was, Mr. President, respectfully, I'll try not to tell you how to be president. Don't try to tell me or any other reporter how to cover a political campaign. But on second thought, better angels took over. And I thought while he was forceful, he was measured. And there's a lot of truth in what he said. Perhaps the most important part of it is when he said, he really called out the owners of our major information cycles and saying, in effect, you are the guys, if you wanted to perform a public service, you could finance investigative reporting, hard-hitting reporting, of the kind that we need, particularly in this presidential election year. I thought that was quite valuable and on the money. What's happened to those of us in journalism, Lawrence, and I include myself in this criticism, is that in many ways we've lost our guts, we've lost our spine, we've lost the vision of what a journalist in a society such as ours should be and can be. Journalism at its best counts. It matters. And what's happened in this campaign, not just with what Donald Trump says, but on both sides, I'm not saying evenly on both sides, but Nate Silver of the New York Times said it, when it comes to Trump, much of the coverage has been really unconscionable and at least borderline cowardice. Cowardice is a charged word. I'm not sure I'd go that strong. But those of us in the press and the media, we have a lot to answer for, as the president outlined in his talk last night in Washington. But I'd come back to the point that news is no longer seen by the people who own the major news outlets as something in the public trust for the public service. It's all about money. And Les Moonves is a good and decent man and a person who's a genius in some ways of television programming, but doesn't understand the nature of news. I'd like to believe that Les Moonves, if he had it to do over again, would take back that quote that says Donald Trump may be bad for America, but he's damn good for CBS. What a thing to say for a man who sits atop an organization that has one of the world's greatest and most honored news organizations. If he'd turn his tigers loose and say, listen, I want to finance some deep digging investigative reporting in this campaign, and I want tough questions, and I want tough follow-ups. As you and I both know, Lawrence, frequently, it takes one or two follow-ups to really go. And as you pointed out earlier, we don't get that with Donald Trump, with the exception of, and I give the man credit in Wisconsin, and it is true you have to interrupt, but there's a lot in that. But, I think in the end that the American people are beginning, at least beginning as a whole, to see what's happened here, that Trump has sucked all the oxygen out of most of the other candidates and campaigns, that politicians, like reporters, television reporters, airtime is their oxygen. And Trump has been given all the oxygen and free. I think your figure was he has at least $1.9 billion of free time on television.
And not all of it's been positive. I mean, this program hasn't been doing positive fawning coverage of Donald Trump.
I wouldn't call it that.
We've been criticizing everything he says.
All right. Well, listen, wherever you want to come down on this issue, first of all, let me make a comment that, I miss Dan Rather. In so many ways, I miss Dan Rather. But mostly as the straight-talking guy that he is. And so I want to thank Lawrence O'Donnell for bringing him into the loop, number one. Number two, it goes back to something that you and I have discussed multiple times this week, and that is about profitability, that, that old $3 that you've been talking about all week. It just seems to me that, and think about that, Donald Trump has received, according to Dan Rather, $1.6 billion in free media time. $1.6 billion, not million, billion. That's called, in the political world, earned media, and it's something that every candidate clamors for, and rarely do they get. Let me ask you a question. Donald Trump's comments on abortion yesterday, and then changing his mind, as some outlets are saying, 3 times in 3 hours. Is this part of a different strategy for Donald Trump? Is he trying to push people away, do you think?
I have a theory, but
I want to hear that theory.
But before I go into that theory, listening to Dan Rather, reminded of news guys like Brinkley and Brokaw and Cronkite, real newsmen, instead of these, bloviating D-bags on, Hannity and O'Reilly, and even some on the left who are basically, as Obama pointed out, microphone holders. When I was watching The Newsroom with Jeff Daniels, and if anyone's listening to this, you absolutely have to go and watch the HBO series, The Newsroom. having been in the news and worked in the news, I literally, I hate to admit this, but there were times when I literally teared up a little bit. I got choked up during the news because it reminded me of a time when the news was trustworthy, when we trusted our journalists. And this conversation with Dan Rather kind of reminded me of that. I didn't quite get the same effect because he's right. You know, there wasn't as much emotion or drama as there may be on the newsroom, but that they're being reminded, that these real news guys are being reminded of a time when they were responsible for informing the public, and rather than just, you know, reporting on what happened or what someone said, they were challenging them and they were educating them. And I've got to tell you, Shep Smith, to a certain degree on Fox News, has that kind of attitude. And it's refreshing. And I think it's refreshing because it's coming from Fox News and you don't expect it. So you watch Shep Smith when he comes out about Ebola or about something a candidate said, and it looks at the audience and said, look, this is complete BS. This is not really, you're being lied to. I get a little tingle and I go, oh my God, I can't believe they actually have someone on Fox News that's telling the truth. But news people telling the truth shouldn't come as a surprise. I mean, and that's where
it's interesting, Z, as you were talking, I remember reading about the crap that Walter Cronkite took when he was reporting the assassination of John Kennedy and he got emotional on air. And that was a huge controversy at the time because it showed, quote unquote, a bias. Mm-hmm. Well, I don't know what the bias was. Was the bias for a Democratic president or for a president that had just been murdered? But that was a huge controversy back then. Today, we would expect that kind of response from an anchor, wouldn't we?
Yeah, but I think we would expect it from particular news sources, right? And I agree with
most particular news sources. I'm sorry. I'm just going to have to insist that the vast majority, unless it was President Obama getting assassinated, we wouldn't expect Fox News to be as compassionate, but we would, I think, everybody else.
Yeah, I think it would be a subtitle on Fox News. You know?
It probably would be. Anyway, let me ask you a question. Do you want to get to the Greenfield interview before we talk about your Trump theory, or do you want to do your Trump theory now and then get to the Greenfield interview?
The Greenfield interview is pretty interesting, so let's get to that.
All right,
here we go. Jeff Greenfield from Slate. Is that right?
That is correct.
Jeff Greenfield, there's an incredible challenge I find in covering the Trump campaign. You have Bernie Sanders says he's a pathological liar. He will stand up there and give a speech in which he challenges the press to check his facts, and every one of the facts he's just given is false. Well, that night when I was watching that speech, it made me think: do we need to treat this like it's in a foreign language and have a translation, like a truth translation, running along the side of the screen saying, this is false, this is false, this is false? What do we do? How do we cover that?
When you said you've never seen anything like this, we saw this more than half a century ago when Joe McCarthy would make charges and the press would say McCarthy says 200 communists in the State Department says there aren't. And out of McCarthyism, we were supposed to have learned the lesson that even an objective press ought to be able to say what is and what isn't. And the principal failing in much of what I've seen in the press on television is lack of preparation. I don't have a problem with bringing Donald Trump on. He was a force of nature in this campaign, the likes of which no one ever saw before. But you can't bring Donald Trump on for an hour and ask questions like, do you think you're going to win Michigan?
Right.
When there is a record of falsehood. There's one other point that I think is critical, and that is, and it's the most disturbing thing of all, there's been an awful lot of the press that has tried to nail Trump on dissembling, lies, failures. A considerable part of Donald Trump's constituency is sufficiently cynical about the press that it does not believe what the press says when it says Donald Trump is lying. And that may be the most serious thing of all. We've had lots of good stories about how Donald Trump's constituency has been left behind by the elites, condescended to, not had their economic needs answered. But we are now at the point, I think, where at least for his people, if a network says Donald Trump says thousands of Muslims were cheering in New Jersey, it's not true, their response is, you probably lost the tape. And that tells you about the disconnection, not just between the Republican Party elites and their new voters, but between the media, that even when we're doing our job, at least among that constituency, it doesn't matter.
And you and I have talked about that ad nauseum, that it doesn't matter to Trump supporters what you say, what the truth is, what is going on. They're going to listen to Trump. I mean, that it's just the way it is. I mean, both of these conversations, which were back to back, were extremely interesting and insightful. For a big reason is that not to say that we were right, but that you and I have been talking about this for a really long time. That they're going in unprepared. They're letting candidates say whatever the hell they want. They're not doing follow-ups. And I don't know if it's the nature of the accessibility of news, or because if they're not happy with the way they're presented by one station, they can go to another and they'll get an audience. So it's not like you only have three main stations.
Let me make a sidebar comment, and then I want to get to your Trump theory. But in this 24/7 cable news cycle, which not all networks adhere to, and that's my point. If you watch MSNBC, especially late at night or in the weekends and the evenings, they actually play, caught on camera and other infotainment, if you will, or even entertainment type programming. They're not trying to force themselves to be something they're not. And they're not a 24/7 news network, where CNN and CNBC, well, maybe not CNBC, but CNN and certainly Fox play that game that they need to be on the air 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, forcing upon us really a false narrative. With that said, Donald Trump did not have a good day yesterday. And you and I were talking before the show, as we do every day, and you said you had a theory, a Trump theory, and I asked you to save it for the show. So it's showtime. We've got 5 minutes left, so let's get into your theory.
So it's a working theory that I've had for a while, and then one of his campaign people, of part of one of his PACs, I guess, quit and wrote an open letter. And I wasn't sure it was real until The Hill reported and verified it. And it was from this woman who was working for Trump and on his campaign, one of his campaign strategists, who basically said that this was never meant to go this far, that the Trump campaign, they were hoping for second or third place, maybe 12%, and that was it, right? And it was just to prove a point and part of the branding strategy to be able to say I ran for president and I was second or third place. And when it got to this point, her opinion is that his ego took over and now he's all in. My theory is that he's not all in. And in fact, he was asked a question by a reporter the other day, is why would you give up all this? Because if he does get the presidency, let's say, if that ever happens, which is, really a long shot, he would have to give up all of his businesses. Everything goes into a trust. He can't do business in his real estate stuff as president of the United States. So I'm thinking he's trying to find a way out. I mean, he said so many ridiculous things yesterday, Tony, about pulling out of NATO, ending nuclear proliferation, even not taking off the table the possibility of nuking Europe or the Middle East. I mean, he was asked a straightforward question, would you launch nuclear attacks on the Middle East or Europe? And he goes, I'm not going to take it off the table. That's never been said by even the craziest Tea Parties on the right have never said anything that insane. His stance on abortion, which is what we got to today, everything he said is turning him into being completely unelectable. And he's not a stupid guy. And also, if you watch the video of everything he said up until a year ago, of where he stands on issues that are very particular to, I think this has been, I'm hoping, and you call me an idealist or, overly hopeful, but I think this has been a long con that got away from him. And now he's trying to find a way out. And I don't know if his ego is going to take over or if, I don't know where we are at this point with this.
And that all may be true. Let's go back to the day before yesterday.
And tomorrow is April 1st. When he
said, let's, no joking. Let's go back to the day before yesterday when he said to a town hall in Wisconsin that I'm not going to say what I'm going to do. I'm not going to let the enemy know what I'm going to do. You folks just trust that I'm going to do the right thing. You don't need the details. You don't need them. People went crazy.
Yeah.
People went absolutely insanely crazy when he said that, and in a good way.
Yeah.
And I went absolutely insanely crazy in a bad way. As I'm thinking to myself, what do you mean I don't need the details? I need every freaking detail you think you've got in that convoluted head of yours. But let me go back to one quick thing before we have to wrap it up. Is the alternative to Donald Trump really Ted Cruz?
Well, that's the really scary.
Think about that.
That's the really scary
John Kasich. Part. Listen, John Kasich, I don't care how much math you do, unless it's on the fourth ballot at a contested convention, no way a guy like that is going to be the nominee. And even if he is, he has an extreme enough record that just hasn't been outed because he sounds like a nice guy.
Well, yeah, and let's not forget that by some polls, and emphasis on some, by some polls, Ted Cruz and Hillary Clinton tie in a general election. Tie.
Now, polls are moving so fast and furious that I'm ignoring them. I am. At this point, it doesn't matter. The poll you're mentioning was 10 days ago, and that has changed 4 times in the last 10 days, just as the crap that's happening in Wisconsin has changed. Here's a great example, and then we're going to have to wrap it up. Yesterday, a poll's out that shows Bernie just about within the margin of error with Hillary. Today, there's a New York Times poll. I'm talking nationally. Today, there's a New York Times poll that shows her up by 14 points. Which one do you want to believe, Z?
Yeah. Well, you got your choice.
Pick and choose. Yeah. Pick and choose. Anyway, we got to wrap it up. Tell us, how do we get more information about TNZ Talk?
Well, one quick thing. Even Nate Silver right now is seeing a way for Bernie to win. So, but to answer your question, Tony.
Yeah, he was so good on Michigan, so yeah, I'm sorry.
Exactly.
He's lost a little luster with me, but go ahead.
I know, the golden boy. So you can find us on the interwebs, on the intertubes at tnztalk.com. You'll find us, our Facebook, Twitter, Tumblr link, everything you need to know about me and Tony, but we're afraid to ask, as well as our support page and how you can support us either financially, which we really need, or also ratings and reviews on iTunes, Android. Like I said, everything you need to know about us, but we're afraid to ask, you can find at tnztalk.com.
Absolutely. And let me just simply say 2 really good things happened today. I got to say kerfuffle, and Z got to say intertubes and whatever it was, which I love. But in the meantime, Z, thanks for another great show. We'll wrap up the week tomorrow, as of course we will. No joking, no fooling. Quick programming note, beginning Monday, we are moving to 10 a.m. Eastern Time, so we'll be on from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. Monday through Friday. So make a note of that. Caller, sorry we couldn't get to you, but you need to call before we have less than 2 minutes left in the show. I want to thank Ron Spikes and Rihanna and everybody at Blog Talk Radio for all the ways they support what we do. Z, have a great day. I'll talk to you in just about a half an hour on our conference call. And in the meantime, folks, and as always, we ask that you be well.
Oh, yeah. Can you feel it? Just over the credits, just riffing now. Words and chords. Not the poetry and the real thing, but not bad for an ad-lib. Not good, but... And it's not long enough, so just do a little bit more. And that's nearly done. That's the final credit there. That's the end.